Welcome to Cheaters Theater. Over 95% of you watch without subscribing. Please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tell us, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Let's begin. At my daughter's wedding reception, I gave my name at the entrance, but the staff looked puzzled. Sorry, your name isn't on the list. Shocked, I turned to my ex-wife. She smirked. Did you really think you were invited? Strangers aren't allowed. I smiled calmly. Then he'll live like a stranger. And with that, I walked away. But during the ceremony, my ex-wife's phone would not stop ringing. Nolan Ashford stood in his workshop, the rich scent of freshly cut cedar filling the air. He ran his calloused hands over the polished surface of a handcrafted jewelry box. The intricate vine pattern carved along its edges had taken weeks to perfect. Inside, he had inscribed a simple message. To Elena, my greatest creation. Love, Dad. As the owner of Ashford Custom Furnishings, Nolan had built a reputation for crafting heirloom pieces that told stories. His large frame, weathered face, and prematurely gray hair at 41 made him look older than his years, but his hands remained steady and precise. The workshop had been his refuge ever since Vanessa Hale left, taking their 16-year-old daughter, Elena, with her. You think she will like it? Nolan asked, glancing at Marcus Delgado, his oldest friend, who sat on a sawdust-covered stool nursing a beer. Marcus, a former Marine-turned-bar owner with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, shrugged. It's beautiful, Nal, but you know how Vanessa poisons everything. Nolan winced at the truth in Marcus's words. 8 years ago, his world had crumbled when he discovered Vanessa's affair with Victor Langford, a slick real estate developer with the instincts of a shark and the moral compass of a rattlesnake. The divorce had been brutal, with Vanessa painting Nolan as a workaholic who neglected his family, conveniently omitting her year-long affair. I still remember the day I met her, Nolan said, carefully placing the jewelry box in its protective case. Community college art class. She was painting this awful landscape. A rare smile crossed his face. I told her it looked like her trees were melting. Marcus smirked. Should have run when you saw those melting trees. Nolan shot him a glare. Nolan's phone buzzed, a rare text from Elena. Mom said to tell you I'm engaged. Wedding in 4 months. Julian's family is paying for everything. No invitation, no request for his blessing, just a cold, impersonal announcement. She's getting married, Nolan murmured, his voice hollow. My baby girl to the Reed kid. Henry Reed's son? The tech mogul? Marcus asked. Nolan nodded. He had already seen the society page announcement 3 weeks ago. Julian Reed, 29, heir to Reed Innovations, engaged to Elena Hale, 24, graduate student in art history. The photo showed a handsome young man with a warm smile, his arm wrapped around Elena. She had Nolan's eyes, but Vanessa's golden hair and delicate features. Nolan immediately tried calling Elena straight to voicemail. He left a message congratulating her, asking if they could meet for coffee. He wanted to give her the jewelry box in person, to see her face when she opened it. That evening, Nolan drove home, passing through the upscale neighborhood where Vanessa now lived with Victor. Their house, a modernist glass and steel monstrosity, loomed like a monument to excess. He had driven past it before, imagining Victor smugly enjoying the life funded by Vanessa's divorce settlement and shady real estate deals. Once home, Nolan opened his laptop and looked up Julian Reed. By all accounts, the young man seemed respectable. Graduated with honors from UC Berkeley, worked his way up in his father's company rather than demanding an executive position, volunteered with tech education programs for underprivileged youth. Then Nolan's phone rang. It was Paige Collins, Vanessa's younger sister. Nolan, I thought you should know, she said without preamble. Vanessa and Victor are planning to exclude you from the wedding. Nolan's grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? They're telling Elena you're too unpredictable, that you might cause a scene. Paige hesitated. I've tried reasoning with Vanessa, but Victor has her convinced you'll ruin everything. I'm her father. I know, she said, her voice softer. That's why I'm calling. A pause. And there's something else. I don't think Victor is who he pretends to be. Vanessa mentions money problems sometimes, then clams up. When I push, she gets defensive. Nolan thanked Paige and hung up. He stared at Elena's graduation photo, the last time he had seen her in person. She had barely spoken to him, kept her distance at Vanessa's insistence. I won't let them take this from me too. Nolan whispered to the empty room. The next morning, he paid a visit to Tessa Nguyen, the private investigator he had hired during the divorce. Tessa's office, a small space above a Vietnamese restaurant, was neat but utilitarian. "I need information on Victor," Nolan said after they exchanged greetings. "His finances, personal history, legal record, everything. And there's a woman named Gloria. I think she was his ex before Vanessa." Tessa, a compact woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, nodded. "This about your daughter's wedding?" Nolan nodded grimly. "Family situations are messy," Tessa said, jotting down notes. "What's your endgame?" "I want my daughter back," Nolan said simply. "And I want the truth to come out." After leaving Tessa's office, Nolan returned to his workshop. Immersing himself in work, he shaped a piece of walnut as his mind drifted back to a memory. Teaching 5-year-old Elena to sand wood, her small hands gripping the sandpaper, his guiding hers, the pride in her eyes when they finished their first project, a simple birdhouse. By evening, Nolan had made his decision. He would not beg for an invitation. He would attend his daughter's wedding as any father should, and no one, not Vanessa, not Victor, was going to stop him. Shoreline Gardens reception hall gleamed with understated luxury. Floral arrangements worth more than Nolan's monthly mortgage adorned every table. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's elite politicians, business magnates, and socialites mingling over champagne. Nolan adjusted his tie, the same one he had worn to Elena's high school graduation, and approached the reception desk, the jewelry box tucked under his arm. He had dressed in his best suit, had his hair neatly trimmed, determined to look presentable for his daughter's special day. "Good evening," he said to the young woman, checking names off the guest list. "Nolan Ashford, father of the bride." She smiled politely and scanned her tablet. Then her smile wavered. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see your name on the list." A cold weight settled in Nolan's stomach. "There must be a mistake. I'm Elena Hale's father." The woman looked uncomfortable. "Let me check again." After a moment, she shook her head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ashford. Your name isn't on the approved guest list." Nolan stood frozen, aware of the curious glances from nearby guests. The jewelry box felt heavier in his hands. "Nolan." Vanessa's voice cut through his humiliation. She approached in a designer gown that likely cost more than his. Her blonde hair was immaculately styled. At 47, she barely looked a day over 35. "Vanessa," Nolan acknowledged, keeping his voice steady. "There seems to be a mistake. My name isn't on the guest list." Vanessa's smile was practiced polite for the onlookers, but her eyes were cold. "It's not a mistake." Nolan felt his face flush, anger rising, but he kept his composure. "Check my daughter too." Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Is she dash?" She arched a brow. "Where were you when she needed braces? When she had panic attacks before college interviews? When she cried over her first breakup? You know darn well I tried to be there," Nolan said, his voice quiet but firm. "You blocked me at every turn." A smooth voice interrupted. "Problem here." Victor had appeared at Vanessa's side, slipping a possessive arm around her waist. At 49, he maintained the lean, polished look of a man who valued appearances over substance. His expensively cut salt-and-pepper hair and practiced smile only added to the act. "No problem," Nolan said, meeting Victor's gaze. "I just came to give my daughter a wedding gift and wish her happiness." "You can leave it with us," Victor said dismissively. Nolan shook his head. "I'd like to give it to her myself." "That's not happening," Victor said, his tone dropping its last trace of civility. "Security is very strict about uninvited guests." Nolan looked past them, hoping to catch a glimpse of Elena. Did she even know? Had she agreed to ban her own father from her wedding? A flicker of discomfort crossed Vanessa's face. "We made the decision for her," she said. "Today is stressful enough without family drama." "Sorry, your name isn't on the list." Nolan repeated the receptionist's words, his voice tinged with quiet disbelief. "Is that what you told her, that I'm not family anymore?" Vanessa's expression hardened. "You forfeited that right years ago." Nolan swallowed back his anger. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Instead, he looked directly at Vanessa. "Did you really think you were invited?" "Strangers aren't allowed," she said, her voice cutting. Victor stepped forward, his posture vaguely threatening. "You heard my wife, you're not welcome here." A calm settled over Nolan. He placed the jewelry box on the reception desk. "Make sure she gets this," he said, his dignity intact. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, ignoring the whispers and curious stares of the other guests. Outside, he took a deep breath of the cool evening air, his hands trembling slightly. The valet, watching him with quiet sympathy, stood by, but Nolan bypassed him. He had parked his truck across the street, knowing instinctively that he might need a quick exit. As he sat in the driver's seat, he stared at the glittering venue. Inside, his daughter was celebrating one of the most important days of her life, and he was not allowed to be part of it. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Ashford, this is Julian Reed. We need to talk about what just happened. My fiancée should have her father at our wedding." Nolan stared at the message, a small flame of hope flickering to life. Julian Reed had grown up with everything money could buy, but his mother's early passing had taught him the one thing wealth could not purchase: time with family. At 29, he had inherited his father's sharp analytical mind and his mother's compassion, a rare combination that served him well as innovation director at Reed Innovations. So when he spotted Nolan Ashford being turned away at the reception, something did not sit right. The man had not caused a scene, had not raised his voice. He had simply left with quiet dignity after placing a carefully wrapped package at the desk. Julian excused himself from a conversation with his father's business associates and made his way toward Elena, who was surrounded by her bridesmaids. "Can we talk privately for a minute?" he asked gently, taking her hand. Once they were alone in a quiet corner, Julian chose his words carefully. "I just saw your dad. He tried to come to the reception." Elena's blue eyes, so much like Nolan's, widened in surprise. "Dad came. You didn't know he was coming?" She shook her head. "Mom said he declined the invitation, that he was too busy with work." Elena's voice faltered. "He wasn't invited, was he?" Julian shook his head. "From what I could see, your mother and Victor had him removed from the guest list." Elena's face crumpled. "They promised me they invited him. I should have checked myself, but with all the wedding planning and my thesis defense dash," Julian took her hands. "It's not too late. The ceremony isn't until tomorrow. We can call him." Elena hesitated, years of manipulated perceptions creating doubt. "Mom always said he chose his business over us, that he didn't fight for custody because he didn't want the responsibility. Is that why you've been distant with him?" Julian asked gently. "Have you ever asked him his side of the story?" Elena opened her mouth and stopped. "No, I just accepted what Mom told me." Julian pulled out his phone. "I got his number from the vendor list. Your mom tried to remove it, but I saw that he made the arch we're getting married under." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "He did? She told me it was from Victor's architect friend." "There's a small N carved into the back," Julian said. "I noticed it during the venue setup." Elena ran a hand over her face, emotions warring inside her. "Call him, Elena," Julian said, squeezing her hand. She took the phone but hesitated. "What if Mom's right? What if he doesn't care?" Julian shook his head. "The man I saw tonight brought a gift, wore a suit that had seen better days, and didn't make a scene when he was turned away. That's not the action of someone who doesn't care." While Elena wrestled with her thoughts, Julian went in search of Vanessa and Victor. He found them mingling with guests, playing the perfect hosts. "Could I speak with you both privately?" Julian asked, his polite tone barely masking his anger. Once in a side room, he dispensed with pleasantries. "Why wasn't Elena's father invited to our wedding?" Victor stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Julian's shoulder. "There's history here you don't understand. Nolan has anger issues. He's unpredictable." Julian arched a brow. "Really?" "Because the man I just saw handled being humiliated with complete dignity." Vanessa touched his arm, her voice soft and practiced. "Sweetie, we were protecting Elena. Nolan abandoned us years ago." "That's not what his employee told me when I commissioned the wedding arch," Julian countered. "He said Nolan fought for visitation rights for years, until Elena started refusing to see him." Vanessa's smile faltered. "His employee would say that. Then why did you lie to Elena about the arch?" Julian pressed. "Why tell her Nolan declined an invitation that was never sent?" Victor's expression hardened. "Listen, son dash, I'm not your son," Julian cut in, his voice cold. "And I'm starting to wonder what else you've lied about." Vanessa's tone turned brittle. "We've welcomed you into our family, Julian. Don't throw that away over Nolan's manipulations." "I've texted Nolan," Julian said, stepping back. "I want him at our wedding tomorrow. If you care about Elena's happiness, you'll fix this." Without waiting for a response, he left and returned to Elena, who was still staring at his phone, her thumb hovering over the call button. I can't do it, she whispered. Not over the phone. I need to see him. Julian nodded. Then let's go. Elena looked at him in surprise. We'd be leaving our own rehearsal dinner. If not now, then when? Julian asked. Meanwhile, at Delgado's Bar and Grill, Nolan sat nursing a whiskey, recounting the night's humiliation to Marcus and Marisol Vega, the owner of the vintage furniture store next to his workshop. At 39, Marisol carried herself with the confidence of a woman comfortable in her own skin. Her dark curls were streaked with silver, her brown eyes warm with concern. You should have let me come with you, Marisol said. I'd have given that plastic surgery princess a piece of my mind. And played right into their hands, Nolan replied, shaking his head. Victor would have loved nothing more than for me to cause a scene. The bar door opened, and Nolan froze mid-sentence. Elena stood in the entrance, Julian beside her, both still in their formal attire from the rehearsal dinner. Marcus nudged Nolan. Incoming. Nolan stood as Elena approached, taking in the sight of his daughter, her golden hair, his blue eyes, her mother's delicate chin. She had grown into a beautiful young woman in the years they had been apart. Dad, Elena said, her voice small. Elena, Nolan replied, unsure what to say next. Julian stepped forward, offering his hand. Mr. Ashford, I'm Julian Reed. I'm very sorry about what happened tonight. Nolan shook the younger man's hand, noting the firm grip and direct gaze. Call me Nolan. An awkward silence fell. Marisol broke it with characteristic bluntness. I'm going to take Marcus to help me inventory the bar, she announced, dragging a protesting Marcus away. Left alone with the young couple, Nolan gestured to the booth. Would you like to sit? They slid into the booth, Elena perching nervously on the edge of her seat. I didn't know you weren't invited, she blurted out. Mom told me you declined. Nolan's jaw tightened. That's not true. I never received an invitation to decline. I should have known. I should have called you myself, Elena said, guilt weighing heavy in her voice. It's not your fault, Nolan said. But it is, she insisted. I believed everything they told me, that you didn't fight for custody, that you didn't want to be part of my life. I filed for joint custody, Nolan replied, his voice firm but gentle. Your mother fought it with expensive lawyers, and when that didn't work, she convinced you I was the villain. Elena looked down at her hands. I remember her crying, saying you wanted to take me away from her, that you thought she was a bad mother. I never said that, Nolan replied. Your mother is many things, but I always respected her as your mother. Julian, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. Nolan, I want you at our wedding tomorrow. You should be the one walking Elena down the aisle. Nolan turned to his daughter. Is that what you want, Elena? Elena met his gaze, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know. I'm so confused right now. All these years, I thought she trailed off, struggling to process the truth. I need time. Nolan nodded. Take all the time you need. But know this, I have always loved you, Elena. That has never changed. Not for one single day. Elena wiped a tear from her cheek. The ceremony is at 2:30 p.m. tomorrow. I'd like you to be there even if you're not walking me down the aisle yet. Nolan felt a cautious flicker of hope. Your mother and Victor won't like it. It's my wedding, Elena said, newfound resolve in her voice. And you're my father. Julian smiled, squeezing Elena's hand. That settles it then. As the couple prepared to leave, Nolan remembered something. Did they give you my gift? Elena frowned. What gift? A jewelry box. I made it for you. She shook her head. No, they didn't mention anything about a gift. Nolan sighed, unsurprised. I'll bring another one tomorrow. After they left, Marisol slid into the booth across from Nolan. Well, I'm going to my daughter's wedding, Nolan said simply. Marisol smiled, raising her glass. To second chances. Nolan clinked his glass against hers, but a nagging doubt remained. Vanessa and Victor had fought to keep him away for years. They would not stop now just because the groom had intervened. His phone buzzed, Vanessa's name flashing on the screen. He let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was tightly controlled. Julian says he invited you to the wedding. That's right. If you care about Elena at all, you'll decline. Your presence will only upset her on her special day. Nolan let out a bitter laugh. That's strange. I just spoke with Elena, and she didn't seem upset about me attending. Vanessa's voice turned venomous. You always were good at manipulating her. Victor and I have spent years protecting her from your influence. Is that what you call lying to her? Nolan asked coolly. We did what was necessary. The lies stop now, Vanessa, he said firmly. I'm attending my daughter's wedding. If anyone causes a scene, it won't be me. He ended the call and looked up to find Marisol watching him, her expression a mix of concern and admiration. You okay? She asked. Nolan exhaled slowly. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Want backup? I clean up nice, she offered with a smirk. Nolan considered the offer and nodded. Actually, I think I would. As he drove home that night, he realized something he had not felt in years. Hope. Fragile, vulnerable, but undeniably present. St. Matthew's Episcopal Church stood as a testament to old money and tradition, its stone facade gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Inside, the pews were filled with the city's elite, their hushed conversations echoing through the vaulted ceilings. Nolan and Marisol slipped in quietly, choosing seats near the back. Nolan wore a new charcoal suit purchased that morning at Marisol's insistence. If you're walking into the lion's den, she had said, at least look like the better lion. Dressed in a deep green gown that complemented her olive complexion, Marisol squeezed his hand. You good? Nolan nodded, though his heart pounded. He carried another jewelry box, identical to the first, wrapped in silver paper. Several guests glanced their way, whispering behind their programs. Nolan recognized some of the faces from business functions, people who had heard Vanessa and Victor's version of events for years. Quite the crowd, Marisol murmured. Half of them look like they're here for networking rather than the wedding. Victor's circle, Nolan confirmed. Business associates. Political connections. He collects people like trading cards. The organ began playing, signaling the start of the ceremony. Nolan watched as Julian entered with the minister, looking confident in his tailored tuxedo. Henry Reed, Julian's father and best man, followed. A tall, distinguished man with the same kind eyes as his son. Then the bridal march began. Nolan held his breath. Elena appeared at the back of the church on Victor's arm, resplendent in an elegant ivory lace gown. A sharp pang of grief struck Nolan's chest. It should have been him walking her down the aisle, not the man who had helped destroy his family. Elena's eyes scanned the congregation as she walked, pausing when she spotted Nolan. She gave him a small, uncertain smile that made his heart clench. The ceremony proceeded with practiced precision. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Victor's smug reply, "Her mother and I do," made Nolan's jaw tighten. Beside him, Marisol placed a calming hand on his arm. As the newlyweds shared their first kiss, Nolan blinked back unexpected tears. Despite everything, seeing his daughter happy filled him with a bittersweet joy. At the reception, Nolan and Marisol were seated at a table far from the wedding party, a final petty gesture from Vanessa. They were joined by distant relatives of Julian, who seemed equally out of favor. Nolan Ashford. A deep voice spoke from behind him. Nolan turned to find Henry Reed extending his hand. Julian told me about you. I'm sorry for the circumstances. Nolan stood and shook his hand. Thank you for having me. Nonsense, you're Elena's father. You belong here. Henry's direct gaze reminded Nolan of his sons. Julian speaks highly of your craftsmanship. The arch was exceptional work. Thank you. It was a labor of love. Henry nodded toward Vanessa and Victor, who were watching their interaction with barely concealed displeasure. Those two have been in damage control all day, spinning some tale about how family reconciliation was their idea. Nolan managed a tight smile. Sounds like them. I've built my business on being able to read people, Henry said, and those two read like bad fiction. He handed Nolan a business card. Call me next week. I'd like to discuss commissioning some pieces for our new corporate headquarters. As Henry walked away, Marisol let out a low whistle. Henry Reed wants to work with you. That's huge. It's probably just pity, Nolan said, but he carefully pocketed the card anyway. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance. Nolan watched as Victor led Elena onto the dance floor, the sight hitting him like a physical blow. A familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. Nolan. Paige Collins stood beside the table, looking uncomfortable in her bridesmaid dress. Could we talk privately? In a quiet corner of the venue, Paige spoke quickly. Vanessa is fuming that you're here, but I wanted you to know Elena came to me last night, asking questions about the divorce. Real questions, for the first time. Hope flickered in Nolan's chest. What did you tell her? The truth. That Vanessa was unfaithful. That you fought for custody until Elena started refusing to see you. She hesitated, glancing around nervously. There's something else. Victor's in financial trouble. I overheard him arguing with someone about payment deadlines. Nolan's brow furrowed. Do you know what kind of trouble? Paige shook her head. But it's serious. Vanessa has been liquidating her investments, and they've listed their vacation home in Santa Fe. Nolan absorbed the information. Thank you, Paige. I should have spoken up years ago, she admitted regretfully. After what they did to you, it wasn't right. As Paige walked away, Nolan noticed Victor watching them, his expression calculating. Nolan turned to Marisol and summarized the conversation. So Victor might be going broke, she mused. That would explain the desperation to connect with the Reed fortune. And why they were so determined to keep me away, Nolan added. I'm the one variable they can't control. The reception continued an elaborate affair with gourmet food and free-flowing premium liquor. Nolan kept his distance from Vanessa and Victor, focusing instead on the rare opportunity to be near his daughter. His chance came when Elena approached their table during the meal. Dad, she said hesitantly. I'm glad you came. Nolan stood. You look beautiful, Elena. An awkward silence stretched between them, years of separation forming an almost physical barrier. The arch is amazing, Elena finally said. Julian told me you made it. I did. It was an honor. I wish she trailed off, then took a breath. Mom kept every card and gift you sent me. She told me you stopped trying to contact me years ago. A familiar anger burned in Nolan's chest, but he kept his voice even. I never stopped trying, Elena. I sent something for every birthday, Christmas, graduation. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I've missed so much time with you. We can start now, Nolan offered gently. If you want. Before Elena could respond, Victor appeared at her side, his charming facade firmly in place. There's my beautiful daughter, he said, ignoring Nolan completely. Your mother's looking for you. The photographer wants family photos. The emphasis on family was deliberate, and Nolan saw Elena flinch. Victor, Nolan acknowledged, offering a cool nod. Congratulations on gaining such an accomplished son-in-law. Victor's smile was thin, not reaching his eyes. Julian's a fine young man from a fine family, the kind of connections Elena deserves. The kind of connections you need, you mean? Nolan replied quietly. Victor's expression hardened. Enjoy the party, Nolan. It's the closest you'll get to being part of this family again. Dad is part of my family, Elena interjected, surprising both men. And I want him included in the family photos. Victor's face reddened. Elena, your mother won't understand she'll understand just fine, Elena said firmly. It's my wedding day. I get to decide who's in my photos. Nolan followed his daughter, feeling Victor's glare burning into his back. At the photo area, Vanessa's face paled when she saw Nolan approaching with Elena. What is he doing here? She hissed at her daughter. I want Dad in the family photos, Elena replied steadily. Absolutely not, Vanessa snapped. After everything he's done, what exactly has he done, Mom? Elena challenged. Because Aunt Paige tells a very different story than you do. Vanessa shot a venomous look toward her sister, who stood with the other bridesmaids. Paige doesn't know what she's talking about. 3 minutes, Elena said, folding her arms. Dad stands in for 3 minutes of photos, and then you get your way for the rest. This isn't up for discussion. Vanessa relented with poor grace, positioning herself as far from Nolan as possible in the group shots. The photographer, sensing the tension, worked quickly. As Nolan stepped away after the photos, Henry Reed approached him again. Quite the family drama unfolding, he observed. Nolan gave a wry smile. You could say that. Julian values family above all else. Henry continued. Losing his mother young taught him that. He won't tolerate people who try to come between blood relations. Your son is a good man. He is, Henry agreed. And he's chosen your daughter, which speaks well of her too. His gaze sharpened. Despite the efforts of those two, he nodded toward Vanessa and Victor. They've worked hard to paint you as some kind of monster. They've been talking to you. Victor approached me months ago when Julian and Elena first got serious. Pitched investment opportunities, used their relationship as an in. Henry's expression was one of distaste. I don't mix family and business that way. Before Nolan could respond, the clinking of glasses signaled the start of the toasts. He watched as Victor took the microphone, playing the role of proud stepfather with practiced charm. His speech was full of empty platitudes about family and love, words that rang hollow to Nolan's ears. When the formal dances began, Marisol appeared beside Nolan, offering her hand. "May I have this dance?" On the dance floor, she studied his face. "You look like you're plotting something." "Not plotting," Nolan said. "Just thinking." His gaze flicked toward Victor. About his financial troubles, his desperate need to connect with the Reeds, the lies they told Elena. His jaw tightened. "They stole years from me, years I can never get back with my daughter." "So what now?" Marisol asked. Nolan met her eyes, quiet determination in his. "Now I find out exactly what Victor's hiding, and I make sure Elena knows the truth about everything." Across the room, Victor watched them dance, his expression calculating. Beside him, Vanessa sipped her champagne, her perfect mask slipping just enough to reveal the anxiety beneath. "Nolan is getting too close," Victor murmured. "To Elena. To the Reeds." "It's one day," Vanessa replied. "After this, we can manage the situation." "Can we?" Victor's voice had an edge. "Your daughter is starting to ask questions. Henry Reed just spent 10 minutes talking to your ex-husband. This could unravel everything." Vanessa's grip tightened on her champagne flute. "What do you want me to do, cause a scene at my daughter's wedding?" "Of course not," Victor said smoothly. "But when this is over, we need to contain the damage permanently." As the evening wound down, Nolan and Elena shared a brief, awkward hug goodbye. "I'd like to have coffee sometime," Elena said. "To talk." Nolan's throat tightened with emotion. "I'd like that very much." "Mom and Victor will be there," Elena warned. "It might be awkward." "I can handle awkward, if you can." On the drive home with Marisol, Nolan felt a mix of hope and determination settle in his chest. "They didn't win," he said quietly. "No," Marisol agreed. "But they're not done fighting." Nolan nodded grimly. "Neither am I." 9 days after the wedding, Nolan sat in Tessa Nguyen's office, examining the files she had compiled on Victor Langford. "He's been careful," Tessa said, tapping the thinnest folder. "No criminal record. Pays his taxes. Outwardly, he's the perfect, upstanding citizen." "But," Nolan prompted, "but his business dealings are interesting." She opened a much thicker folder. "Langford Urban Development LLC has started and dissolved 6 different LLCs in the past 5 years. Each one exists just long enough to complete a project, then disappears." "Is that illegal?" "Not necessarily," Tessa said. "But it's a classic way to hide money or shield yourself from liability." She handed Nolan a set of financial statements. "He's also taken out multiple high-interest loans recently, some from legitimate banks, others from less reputable sources." Nolan frowned at the documents. "He's underwater." "Drowning," Tessa confirmed. "And the timing coincides with your daughter getting serious with Julian Reed. So he sees Julian's family as a lifeline." "Exactly. And there's more." She pulled out another file. "I found Gloria Benton, Victor's ex-wife before Vanessa. She lives in Phoenix, now practically in hiding." "Did you speak with her?" "Briefly. She was scared, even after all these years. But she agreed to talk to you." Tessa handed Nolan a slip of paper with a phone number. "She said to tell you she's sorry about what happened with your family." Nolan pocketed the number. "Anything else?" "Just this." Tessa handed him a flash drive. "Financial records. Transfers from Vanessa's personal accounts to Victor's business accounts, over $1 million in the past 3 years." Nolan's jaw tightened. He's been bleeding her dry. "And based on these records, she's nearly tapped out. Her divorce settlement from you almost gone." Nolan leaned back, absorbing the weight of this information. "Thank you, Tessa. You've been thorough as always." "There's one more thing." She hesitated. "Victor's been asking around about you, your business, your routines." "Why?" "I don't know. But be careful. Men like Victor get dangerous when they're cornered." Nolan left Tessa's office with a sense of grim satisfaction. He finally had something concrete. Proof that Victor was using Vanessa, that their perfect life was built on deception and financial manipulation. His next stop was Reed Innovations, where Henry Reed had invited him to discuss potential commissions. The corporate headquarters occupied the top floors of a sleek downtown high-rise, all glass and brushed steel. Henry welcomed him into a corner office with a sweeping view of the city. "Glad you could make it. Coffee?" They settled into comfortable leather chairs, discussing Nolan's portfolio and Henry's vision for custom conference tables and reception desks for their new satellite offices. Your work is exceptional, Henry said, flipping through Nolan's designs. I appreciate craftsmen who take pride in what they create. He set down the portfolio. But that's not the only reason I asked you here. Nolan raised an eyebrow. Oh, Julian and Elena got back from their honeymoon yesterday, Henry said. They've been talking about you, about the wedding, about the years of separation. Henry's gaze was steady. My son believes you've been wrong. Nolan exhaled. Your son is perceptive. He's also protective of Elena and now, by extension, of you. Henry leaned forward. Victor Langford has been trying to involve me in his real estate ventures for months, using my son's relationship with your daughter as leverage. Has he succeeded? Henry gave a dry chuckle. I didn't build Reed Innovations by making emotional investment decisions. I had him vetted the minute he approached me. He slid a folder across the desk. Nolan opened it to find reports similar to Tessa's, but with even more details, connections to development projects that had cut regulatory corners, investors who had lost money in Victor's schemes. Why are you sharing this with me? Nolan asked. Henry met his gaze. Because I protect what's mine. His voice was firm. My son loves your daughter. That makes you family in my book. Victor is a parasite. I can't argue with that assessment. Let me be blunt. Nolan, I believe Victor pursued a relationship with your ex-wife specifically to gain access to your daughter, recognizing her academic potential and social connections. Nolan's grip tightened on the folder. You think he targeted my family deliberately? I think Victor identifies opportunities and exploits them. Your ex-wife was vulnerable after your separation. Your daughter was an investment in future connections. Henry's expression hardened. Men like that don't deserve second chances. No, Nolan said quietly but firmly. They don't. After leaving Reed Innovations, Nolan dialed the number Tessa had given him. Gloria Benton answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Mrs. Benton, my name is Nolan Ashford. Tessa Nguyen gave me your number. The investigator, Gloria confirmed. She said you're another of Victor's victims. In a manner of speaking, Nolan said. He's married to my ex-wife, and he's kept me from my daughter for years. A bitter laugh came through the phone. That sounds like Victor. He isolated me from my family too. I'd like to hear your story if you're willing to share it. A long pause. It's not something I talk about. I've spent years trying to forget. I understand, Nolan said gently. But it might help my daughter and others. Another pause, then, I'm coming to the city next month for my niece's graduation. We could meet then. Nolan agreed, thanking her for her willingness to talk. That evening, Nolan met Elena for coffee at a quiet, cafe-neutral ground halfway between his workshop and her new apartment with Julian. She arrived first, nervously shredding a napkin as she waited. Dad, she said, standing as he approached. Elena, he replied, hesitating before settling for an awkward half-embrace. Saturday, how was the honeymoon? Nolan asked after they ordered. Beautiful. Julian rented a villa in Santorini. Elena fidgeted with her wedding ring. I wanted to thank you for coming to the wedding. I know it couldn't have been easy. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words and lost years. Aunt Paige told me things, Elena finally said. About you and Mom. About the divorce. Nolan nodded, waiting. She said Mom was having an affair with Victor before you separated, that you found out and confronted them. Elena's blue eyes searched his face. Is that true? Yes, Nolan confirmed quietly. I came home early from a work trip. They were together in our bed. Elena winced. Mom always said you grew apart, that you chose your business over your marriage. That's not what happened. Why didn't you fight harder for me after the divorce? I did fight, Elena. I spent every penny I had on legal help. But your mother had Victor's money behind her, and she convinced you I was the villain. I remember her crying, Elena said slowly, saying you were trying to take me away from her, that you thought she was unfit. I never said that. I wanted joint custody time with both parents. And the weekend visits that stopped? She said you canceled them. Nolan shook his head. You started saying you didn't want to come, that you had plans with friends, school projects. Eventually, the excuses became outright refusals. Elena looked down at her coffee. I remember Victor saying you didn't really want to see me, that you were just doing it out of obligation. Nothing could be further from the truth, Nolan said. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. You are the most important person in my life. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. I've been so stupid. So blind. No, Nolan said firmly. You were a child, caught between warring parents. The adults in my life failed me, Elena said, a flash of her mother's spirit showing through. Including you. Nolan nodded, accepting the criticism. I should have found a way to reach you. Should have fought harder against their narrative. For the next hour, they talked for the first time in years. Nolan was careful not to vilify Vanessa, focusing instead on his own feelings and experiences. He said nothing about Victor's financial troubles or his conversations with Henry Reed. Those revelations could wait. As they prepared to leave, Elena hesitated. Julian and I are having a housewarming party next weekend. Would you come? Bring Marisol if you want. Nolan felt a surge of hope. I'd like that very much. Mom and Victor will be there, Elena warned. It might be awkward. I can handle awkward if you can. Elena smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, then it faded slightly. As Nolan watched her walk away, he felt both triumph and trepidation. The wall between them was beginning to crumble, but Victor and Vanessa would not surrender their influence without a fight. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Henry Reed. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? There's something we need to discuss regarding our mutual problem. Nolan texted back his acceptance, his resolve hardening. It was time to move from defense to offense. The downtown chop house exuded old money and power, its wood-paneled walls and leather booths having hosted political deals and corporate mergers for decades. Henry Reed was already seated in a private corner booth when Nolan arrived. Hope you don't mind the location, Henry said as they shook hands. I find it useful to have conversations like these where they won't be overheard. Nolan took in Henry's serious expression. Sounds ominous. It may be. Henry ordered scotch for both of them before continuing. I received some troubling information. Victor Langford has been asking questions about you about your business, your personal life. Nolan wasn't surprised after Tessa's warning. Any idea why? My sources suggest he's looking for leverage. Something to discredit you with Elena or worse. Worse. Men like Victor don't surrender gracefully, Nolan. They fight dirty when cornered. Henry waited until the server left. Victor approached one of my executive vice presidents yesterday, offered him a ground floor opportunity in a new development project. When pressed for details, he mentioned having investments from Julian's father-in-law. Nolan's eyebrows shot up. He's using my name implying your involvement? Yes. Creating an association that doesn't exist. Henry sipped his scotch. Common tactic use legitimate names to lend credibility to illegitimate operations. That's son of a dash, indeed. But there's more. Henry leaned forward. My security team reports Victor met with some unsavory characters yesterday, men with connections to loan sharks and debt collectors. Nolan recalled Tessa's findings about Victor's high-interest loans. He's desperate. And desperate men are dangerous, Henry said. I've taken measures to protect Julian and Elena. I suggest you do the same for yourself. What kind of measures? Security systems. Cameras. Being aware of your surroundings. Henry's tone was matter of fact. I don't think Victor would resort to physical violence personally, but he might hire someone who would. Nolan absorbed this information, his jaw tightening. I appreciate the warning. Consider it professional courtesy and personal concern. My son cares deeply for your daughter. Her happiness is tied to yours. The rest of dinner was spent discussing business and family, finding common ground in their love of craftsmanship and their concern for their children. By the time they parted, Nolan felt he had gained not just a business connection, but a potential ally. The next morning, Nolan arrived at his workshop to find the door ajar. Inside, chaos awaited him. Furniture smashed, tools scattered, supplies destroyed. On his workbench, someone had carved "back off" in jagged letters. Marcus arrived minutes after Nolan's call. Jesus, he muttered, surveying the damage. Who did this? Take a wild guess, Nolan replied grimly, already on the phone with the police. The responding officers took photographs and dusted for fingerprints, but Nolan held little hope they would find anything useful. This wasn't a random break-in. It was a message. As Nolan was giving his statement, Marisol rushed in, her face pale with worry. Are you okay? Marcus called me. I'm fine. The workshop's not. Marisol scanned the destruction, her expression hardening. This was Victor most likely. You need to press charges. With what evidence? Nolan gestured around. No witnesses. No cameras. The police left after promising to increase patrols in the area. Nolan, Marcus, and Marisol stood amid the wreckage of Nolan's livelihood. "What now?" Marcus asked. Before Nolan could answer, his phone rang. "Dad." Elena's voice was tight with emotion. "I just heard about your workshop. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, just some property damage." "This is horrible. Do you know who did it?" Nolan hesitated. "The police are investigating." "Was it Victor?" Her direct question surprised him. "Why would you think that?" "Because I've been asking questions, Dad, about the past, about Mom's finances." Victor was furious when he found out I'd been talking to Aunt Paige. Her voice dropped. "And I found something in their house yesterday when I was picking up some old photo albums." Nolan's grip on the phone tightened. "What did you find?" "Financial documents, transfers from Mom's accounts to Victor's businesses. Hundreds of thousands of dollars." Nolan closed his eyes. "Elena, be careful. Do not confront them with this." "Too late." Her voice was shaky. "I asked Mom about it last night. She got defensive, said I was invading their privacy, and Victor, he was scary. I have never seen him like that." Nolan's concern deepened. "Where are you now?" "At work." "I am fine, Dad." She hesitated. "Julian's father has offered us security. He thinks Victor might be desperate." Nolan exhaled slowly. Henry was right. Victor is in financial trouble, and he sees your connection to the Reeds as his salvation. So all these years he kept us apart because he was afraid you would interfere with his plan? Elena's voice cracked. "He used you. He used both of us," Nolan confirmed gently. "Your mother too, most likely." After ending the call, Nolan surveyed the wreckage around him, his resolve hardening. Victor had escalated from manipulation to intimidation. The time for caution had passed. "I need to make some calls," he told Marcus and Marisol, starting with Tessa and Gwen. By that evening, Nolan had installed security cameras at his home and workshop. Marcus volunteered to stay in the guest room as extra protection. Marisol reached out to a lawyer friend who specialized in restraining orders, though they all knew proving Victor's involvement in the vandalism would be difficult. Then Nolan's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Housewarming still on for Sunday. Security will be present. Please come." Despite the circumstances, Nolan felt a glimmer of satisfaction. Victor's desperate attempts to control the situation were backfiring, pushing Elena closer to him instead of driving them apart. The next day brought unexpected support. Henry Reed arrived at Nolan's workshop with 2 security specialists. They upgraded the basic system Nolan had installed, adding motion sensors and panic buttons. "Consider it an investment in my future grandchildren," Henry said simply when Nolan protested the expense. "You're very confident about grandchildren," Nolan observed. Henry smiled. "Julian and Elena are already discussing it. He wants a big family." The thought of grandchildren of being present in their lives from the beginning filled Nolan with fierce determination. He would not let Victor steal that future from him too. Sunday evening arrived. Nolan and Marisol drove to Julian and Elena's new penthouse apartment, both dressed casually but well for the housewarming party. "Ready for this?" Marisol asked as they parked. Nolan nodded grimly. "As I'll ever be." The penthouse was stunning open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. About 35 guests mingled throughout the space, many of them familiar from the wedding. Julian greeted them warmly at the door. "Nolan, Marisol, glad you could make it." Then, lowering his voice, he added, "Fair warning, Victor and Vanessa are here. Security's keeping an eye on them." Nolan nodded in thanks. Scanning the room, he spotted Vanessa by the bar, looking tense despite her flawless makeup and designer dress. Across the room, Victor held court with a group of men, his charming facade firmly in place. Elena approached, wrapping Nolan and Marisol in a hug. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be awkward." "Nothing would keep me away," Nolan assured her. The party carried on with the forced politeness of people determined to avoid confrontation. Nolan kept his distance from Vanessa and Victor, focusing instead on reconnecting with his daughter and getting to know her new husband better. The uneasy balance shattered when Victor's several drinks in approached Nolan by the windows. "Enjoying yourself?" Victor asked, his tone falsely casual. "Playing the devoted father after all these years." "I have always been devoted." Nolan kept his voice even. "You just worked very hard to hide that fact." Victor's smile did not reach his eyes. "You know, Nolan, accidents happen in woodshops all the time. Fingers lost. Machinery malfunctions. Tragic, really. Is that a threat?" Just an observation, Victor said smoothly, sipping his whiskey. Life is unpredictable, especially when people don't know their place. My place is with my daughter, Nolan replied evenly. Something you've tried to prevent for years. For good reason. You're not worthy of her. Victor's mask slipped, revealing the contempt beneath. A small-time furniture maker pretending to be an artist. You could never provide for Vanessa the way I can, never give Elena the opportunities I've made possible. Like draining her mother's accounts to fund your failing businesses? Nolan countered quietly. Those kinds of opportunities? Victor's face hardened. You're out of your depth, Nolan. Walk away while you still can. Or what? Nolan stepped closer. You'll vandalize my shop again? Try to intimidate me? Victor's voice dropped to a menacing whisper. I dismantled your family once. I can do much worse now. Before Nolan could respond, Julian appeared beside them. Everything okay here? Victor's mask slipped back into place. Just catching up, actually, Nolan said, his patience snapping. Victor was just threatening me again. Julian's expression darkened. Is that true, Victor? Of course not, Victor scoffed. Nolan is being dramatic. He gave a dismissive laugh. Too much wine, perhaps. I don't drink wine, Nolan said flatly. And I'm not imagining the threats, the destruction of my workshop, or the years you spent turning my daughter against me. Victor's face flushed with anger. You're delusional. He turned to the security details stationed around the apartment. This man is causing a scene. He should be removed. A security guard approached, but instead of escorting Nolan out, he looked to Julian. Everything all right, Mr. Reed? Julian nodded. Nolan stays. Victor, I think you and Vanessa should leave. You can't throw us out, Victor snapped. We're family. No, Elena said, stepping beside Julian. You're not. Not anymore. Vanessa rushed over, sensing the confrontation spiraling. Elena, what's going on? I know everything, Mom, Elena said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. About Dad. About the divorce. About the money you gave Victor. All of it. You don't understand, Vanessa began. I understand perfectly, Elena interrupted. You lied to me for years. You kept me from my father. I was protecting you, Vanessa insisted. No, you were protecting yourself. And him. Elena gestured toward Victor, whose charm had completely vanished, leaving only raw calculation in his expression. This is ridiculous, Victor snapped. You're believing him over your own mother over me? I've been more of a father to you than he ever was. You were never my father, Elena replied coldly. You were just the man who helped destroy my family. Silence fell over the room, all eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. Victor looked around, realizing he had lost control of the situation. Come on, Vanessa, he snarled, grabbing her arm roughly. These ungrateful children can play house without us. As they stormed toward the exit, Victor turned back for one final shot. This isn't over, Nolan. Not by a long shot. After they left, Elena broke down, the weight of the confrontation finally overwhelming her. Nolan hesitated, unsure of his place, until Julian gave him a small nod. She needs you. Nolan stepped forward, wrapping his arms around his daughter as she sobbed 8 years of manipulation and lies finally breaking the surface of her emotions. It's okay, Elena, he murmured softly. I'm here now. The party dispersed quickly after that, guests making awkward excuses to leave. Soon, only Nolan, Marisol, Julian, Elena, and Henry remained. Well, that could have gone better, Julian said dryly, pouring drinks for everyone. Henry shook his head. It went exactly as it needed to. Victor showed his true colors. He's dangerous, he warned, more so now that he's desperate. That's why I've assigned full-time security to all of you, Henry continued, and why my legal team has been preparing documentation of his financial misdeeds. Elena looked up, surprised. You have? Henry nodded. Victor crossed the line when he threatened Nolan and vandalized his business. I don't tolerate that kind of behavior toward family. Family, Elena echoed softly, glancing at Nolan. Yes, Henry confirmed. All of us together. That's what Victor fears most, that we unite against him. What do we do now? Marisol asked. Nolan exchanged a look with Henry, an unspoken understanding passing between them. We prepare, Nolan said, for whatever he tries next. As they left that night, Nolan found himself pulled into family hugs, Elena holding him tightly, Julian clasping his shoulder, Henry nodding in respect. Despite Victor's threats and the uncertainty ahead, Nolan felt something he had not experienced in years, the solid foundation of family beneath his feet once more. 4 weeks after the housewarming confrontation, Nolan sat across from Gloria Benton in a private room at the Riverside Hotel. Now in her late 50s, Gloria still carried the elegant bone structure that had likely caught Victor's eye years ago, but stress had etched deep lines around her eyes and mouth. "Thank you for meeting me," Nolan said after they ordered coffee. Gloria nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "Tessa convinced me it was important that I might help prevent Victor from hurting more people." "That's exactly why I wanted to talk," Nolan said. "My daughter was manipulated by Victor for years. I'm trying to understand how he operates, to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Gloria took a deep breath. "I met Victor at a charity gala. I was recently widowed, vulnerable, and wealthy from my husband's insurance payout." Her bitter smile held no humor. "Perfect prey. How long were you married?" "A little over 3 years," Gloria said. "Long enough for him to isolate me from friends and family, convince me my judgment could not be trusted, and gain control of my finances." Her voice remained remarkably steady despite the painful subject. "By the time I realized what was happening, he had transferred most of my assets into his business accounts." "How did you get away?" "My brother refused to be shut out. He kept showing up, kept calling, even when Victor tried to prevent it. Eventually, he helped me see what was happening." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "I left with nothing but a suitcase and my brother's support. Victor fought the divorce, threatened me, had me followed." "Did he ever become physically violent?" Nolan leaned forward. Gloria hesitated. "Not directly. But things would happen: a car with failed brakes, a gas leak in my apartment. Nothing could ever be traced back to him, of course." Nolan felt a chill. "How did it end?" "My brother hired a private investigator who found evidence of Victor's affairs during our marriage. We used it as leverage for a clean break, no alimony claims from either side." "And that was the last you heard from him?" Gloria nodded. "Until he married your ex-wife and I saw the announcement in the society pages. I tried to warn her anonymously." "I doubt she ever got the letter," Nolan sighed. "Probably not," Gloria agreed. "Victor would have intercepted it." "Has he threatened you?" she asked, studying Nolan's expression. "My workshop was vandalized, clear warnings to back off." Gloria did not look surprised. "That's his pattern. Intimidation, isolation, financial control, and when those fail, escalation." "I need to protect my daughter without pushing her away again," Nolan admitted. "She's just beginning to see Victor for who he really is." "Document everything," Gloria advised. "Every threat, every strange incident. Victor relies on plausible deniability and gaslighting. Evidence is your best defense." They talked for another hour, with Gloria providing details of Victor's manipulative tactics and shady business dealings. When they finally parted, she handed Nolan a sealed envelope. "My official statement about my marriage to Victor Langford," she explained. "Notarized and witnessed. Use it however you need to." Nolan accepted the envelope gratefully. "Why are you willing to help? It must be painful to revisit all of this." Gloria's expression hardened. "Because I spent years blaming myself, feeling ashamed. If my experience can help your daughter escape his influence, maybe something good can come from it." After Gloria left, Nolan called Henry Reed. "I met with Victor's ex-wife," he said. "She confirmed everything we suspected and more." "Good," Henry replied, "because we may need it sooner than expected. Victor's made some worrying moves." "What kind of moves?" "He's been approaching several of my business associates, claiming to represent a family investment group that includes the Reeds, using our name to solicit funds." Henry's voice was tight with controlled anger. "My legal team is preparing cease and desist letters, but that's just treating the symptoms. What do you suggest? A more permanent solution? Can you meet tomorrow at my office, 3 p.m.? Bring everything you have on Victor." Nolan agreed and got to work. He called Tessa to request copies of all her findings. Next, he contacted Marcus and Marisol, asking them to compile any evidence of threats or vandalism. Finally, he reached out to Paige, who promised to bring financial documents she had secretly copied from Vanessa's home office. The pieces were coming together for a confrontation Nolan had been anticipating for years. That evening, his phone rang. Elena's voice was tense. "Dad, Mom showed up at my office today." She paused. She was crying, saying Victor has changed, that he's been having mood swings, making threats. Nolan stiffened. What kind of threats? She wouldn't specify, just said she's afraid of him now. Elena hesitated. I don't know if I should believe her after everything, but she seemed genuinely terrified. Be careful, Elena. This could be another manipulation, Nolan warned. Or she could really be in trouble. Elena sighed. Despite everything, she's still my mother. I know, sweetheart. Nolan hesitated. I'm meeting with Henry tomorrow. We're putting together evidence of Victor's activities. If your mother is truly afraid, maybe she should come forward with what she knows. I'll suggest it, Elena promised. But she's been under his influence for so long. People can change when they see the truth, Nolan said, thinking of his daughter's own journey. The next day, Nolan arrived at Henry Reed's office with a thick folder of evidence, surprised to find not just Henry waiting, but also Julian, Elena, and Paige. We are all affected by Victor's actions, Henry explained. We should all be part of the solution. They spread their evidence across Henry's conference table, financial records, threatening texts, photos of the vandalism, Gloria's statement, Tessa's reports. Together, they painted a damning picture of a man who had systematically manipulated and exploited those around him. This is more than enough for a restraining order, Paige said, flipping through the documents. Possibly criminal charges for the threats and vandalism. The problem, Henry noted, is proving Victor's direct involvement. He's careful to maintain plausible deniability. What about Mom? Elena asked. If she truly is afraid of him now, could she testify? If we can convince her, Nolan said doubtfully. Victor's hold on her is strong. Maybe not as strong as before, Paige countered. Vanessa called me this morning, asking if she could stay with me for a few days. She said she and Victor had a huge fight about money. A spark of hope ignited in Nolan's chest. If Vanessa turns against him, Victor loses his last shield. Then that's our next step, Henry decided. Paige, see if Vanessa will meet with all of us somewhere safe, neutral. My father's lake house, Julian suggested. Remote, secure, and Victor doesn't know about it. They planned the meeting for the following weekend, hoping to convince Vanessa to break free from Victor's influence and join their united front against him. As they were wrapping up, Nolan's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Shop's on fire. Get here now. Nolan's blood ran cold. I have to go, my workshop's burning. Julian insisted on driving while Henry called ahead to the fire department and police. By the time they arrived, thick black smoke was billowing from the workshop windows, firefighters working to contain the blaze. Across the street, Marcus stood, his face smudged with soot. I was locking up when I smelled gas, he explained. Barely got out before the place went up. Was anyone hurt? Nolan asked urgently. No, thank God. But Nolan, this wasn't an accident. Marcus's voice was grim. I found a broken window in the back. The gas line had been tampered with. A police detective approached, introducing herself as Detective Camila Ortiz. Mr. Ashford, we are treating this as possible arson. Do you have any security footage? Yes, Nolan said. Cameras on all entrances. The feed backs up to a cloud server. While Nolan provided access information, Henry made calls, arranging for additional security for everyone involved and expediting their plans to confront Victor. That night, Nolan stayed at Marisol's apartment, too shaken to return to his empty house. They sat on her couch, a bottle of whiskey between them. He could have killed Marcus, Nolan said, his voice hollow. If Marcus had been working late like he usually does, Marisol squeezed his hand. But he wasn't. And now we have proof of how far Victor will go. Nolan nodded grimly. No more waiting. No more gathering evidence. It's time to end this. The next morning, unexpected news came early. Detective Ortiz called with an update. We've identified a suspect from the security footage, she said. A known arsonist with ties to the loan sharks Victor borrowed from. He was arrested trying to leave town. Will he testify against Victor? Nolan asked. He's considering a deal, Ortiz confirmed. But people like this are usually loyal to whoever pays them. We'll need more than his testimony to connect Victor to the arson. I might have what you need, Nolan said, thinking of the evidence they had compiled. Can I come to the station this afternoon? That afternoon, Nolan shared their findings with Ortiz, who promised to pursue the connection to Victor aggressively. Meanwhile, Paige confirmed that Vanessa had agreed to meet them at the lake house that weekend. She's terrified, Paige reported. Says Victor's become erratic, threatening. She's staying with me until the meeting. Everything was falling into place, but Nolan remained cautious. Victor had proven himself dangerous and unpredictable. Their final confrontation would require careful planning. The Lake House meeting. Henry arranged for professional security at the property. 2 specialists swept the grounds for surveillance devices and maintained a perimeter. Nolan, Elena, Julian, Paige, and Marisol arrived early, preparing the space and reviewing their strategy. Vanessa arrived last, looking nothing like the polished socialite Nolan remembered from the wedding. Her designer outfits had been replaced by jeans and a sweater, her flawless makeup absent, dark circles visible beneath her eyes. "Thank you for coming," Elena said, hugging her mother tentatively. Vanessa clung to her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Elena. For everything." They gathered in the Lake House's spacious living room. Vanessa seated at the center, visibly nervous. "We're not here to attack you," Nolan began, keeping his voice steady despite years of justified anger. "We're here because we are all concerned about Victor's escalating behavior." Vanessa nodded, wiping her tears. "I should have seen it years ago, the control, the isolation, the financial demands. He's been bleeding me dry for years." "Why now?" Paige asked bluntly. "What changed?" "The wedding," Vanessa admitted. "Seeing Nolan there. Seeing Elena reconnect with him. Victor became obsessed with maintaining control. And when his latest development project failed, he blamed me for not contributing enough money." She looked directly at Nolan. "He admitted to vandalizing your workshop. So it was a warning," Nolan said grimly. "And when that did not work, he arranged the fire." Vanessa nodded, fresh tears falling. "He was drunk boasting about how he had taken care of the problem. That's when I realized what I had allowed into our lives." "We need your help," Henry said. "Your testimony, combined with the evidence we've gathered, could put Victor away for a long time." "He'll kill me," Vanessa whispered fearfully. "Not if we act first," Nolan promised. "Together, we can end this." For the next 2.5 hours, they laid out everything they knew. Victor's financial fraud, threats, arson, and his long history of abuse stretching back to Gloria. Vanessa filled in critical gaps, revealing details of financial transactions Victor had forced her into, along with conversations she had secretly recorded on her phone. "I'll testify," she finally said, her voice steadier. "For Elena. For all the years Victor stole from me." As they prepared to leave, Nolan found himself alone with Vanessa for the first time in years. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "What I did to you, to our family, is unforgivable." Nolan studied the woman he had once loved, seeing both the familiar and the stranger she had become. "We all made mistakes," he said. "No." Vanessa shook her head firmly. "What I did was deliberate. I was hurt, angry, and I wanted to hurt you back using Elena that way." Her voice broke. "I'll regret it until the day I die." Nolan felt the years of anger beginning to loosen their grip, not forgiveness. Not yet, but perhaps the start of understanding. "Help us stop Victor," he said. "That's all I ask right now." Vanessa nodded, determination replacing her fear. "I will. I promise." As they drove back to the city, Nolan felt a grim satisfaction settle over him. The confrontation with Victor was coming, and this time Nolan would not be facing him alone. The trap was set with meticulous precision. Henry Reed's legal team had compiled a comprehensive dossier detailing Victor's fraudulent activities, ready for submission to the district attorney. Detective Ortiz had built a solid case linking Victor to the arson, backed by financial records tracing payments to the arrested suspect. Vanessa had provided recorded conversations proving Victor's involvement in vandalizing Nolan's workshop and making direct threats. All that remained was the final confrontation, a chance to give Victor one last opportunity to surrender before the full weight of the law came crashing down on him. The meeting was arranged at Henry Reed's office, under the pretense of discussing a family investment opportunity. Security would be present but discreet, while Detective Ortiz and 2 officers waited in an adjacent conference room. Nolan arrived early, tension coiling in his stomach. This moment had been years in the making, the chance to finally hold Victor accountable for everything he had destroyed. "Nervous?" Henry asked, joining Nolan by the windows. "Concerned," Nolan admitted. "Victor's cornered, which makes him dangerous. That's why we have security, the police, and a solid plan." Henry clasped Nolan's shoulder. "This ends today one way or another." Julian and Elena arrived next, followed by Paige and a visibly anxious Vanessa. They gathered in Henry's office, reviewing their roles one final time. Vanessa would lead the conversation, presenting Victor with the evidence and giving him a choice: surrender peacefully or face the full consequences. At precisely 2 p.m., Victor arrived. He walked into Henry's office with his usual confidence, though Nolan noticed the strain around his eyes and mouth. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Victor remarked, scanning the room. His smile faltered when he saw Vanessa. "Darling, I've been worried sick. Why haven't you come home?" Vanessa straightened her shoulders. "Because I'm afraid of you, Victor." A shadow crossed Victor's expression before he smoothed it into faint concern. "Afraid of me? Vanessa, what's gotten into you?" His gaze flicked around the room, settling on Nolan. "What lies have they been feeding you?" "No lies," Henry said, stepping forward. "Just facts. Please have a seat." Victor remained standing. "I prefer to stand, thank you. Now someone explain why my wife has disappeared, and why I've been summoned to this intervention." Vanessa took a steadying breath. "We know everything. The financial fraud, the threats against Nolan, the vandalism, the arson." Victor laughed, shaking his head. "Arson? You've all lost your minds." "We have proof," Nolan said flatly. "The man you hired to burn down my workshop has been arrested. He's talking to the police." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Victor's face. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Henry pressed a button on his desk. A recording played, Victor's voice, slurred with alcohol, boasting to Vanessa about teaching Nolan a lesson with fire. Victor's face paled as his own words filled the room. "That's been edited," he snapped when the recording ended. "Taken out of context." "The full version has already been submitted to the police," Henry replied calmly, "along with financial records linking you to the arsonist, statements from your past victims, and documentation of your fraudulent business practices." The charm drained from Victor's face, replaced by cold calculation. "So this is a shakedown. What do you want, money? I assure you, I have excellent lawyers." "This isn't a negotiation," Elena said, her voice steady. "It's an opportunity for you to do the right thing for once." Victor turned to her, softening his expression in a well-practiced performance. "Elena, sweetheart, I only ever wanted what's best for you. Like manipulating me against my father for years?" she shot back. "I know the truth now, Victor. All of it." His carefully crafted facade cracked. He turned to Vanessa, his tone hardening. "You ungrateful, after everything I've done for you, for Elena Dash, you've done nothing but use us." Vanessa interrupted, finding courage in the support around her. "You isolated me from my family, turned my daughter against her father, drained my accounts to fund your failing businesses. You wanted the lifestyle," Victor snarled. "The house, the cars, the social status. I provided that." "At what cost?" Nolan cut in. "My relationship with my daughter. Vanessa's financial security. Other people's safety. You resorted to arson and intimidation, Victor." Victor's gaze snapped to Nolan, pure hatred burning in his eyes. "You. This is all because of you. If you had just stayed away, accepted that Elena wasn't yours anymore, Dash, she was always mine." Nolan interrupted quietly. "No matter what lies you told her." Victor lunged, but security was faster. They intercepted him instantly, restraining him just as Detective Camila Ortiz entered with 2 uniformed officers. "Victor Langford." Ortiz's voice rang out with finality. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson, criminal threats, vandalism, and financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As Ortiz continued reading his rights, the fight seemed to drain from Victor. He cast a furious glare around the room, his gaze lingering the longest on Vanessa. "You'll regret this," he spat as the officers secured the handcuffs around his wrists. "All of you." No one responded. They simply watched as the police led him away. When the door closed behind them, a heavy silence filled the space. Years of manipulation, deception, and fear had all led to this single moment: justice finally served. Vanessa collapsed into tears, Paige moving to her side to comfort her. Elena stood frozen in place until Julian gently pulled her into an embrace. Nolan and Henry exchanged a glance, grim but satisfied. "It's over," Henry said quietly. "The arrest is just the beginning," Nolan cautioned. "There will be a trial testimony. But he can't hurt any of us anymore," Elena said, her voice steadier now. "That's what matters." Nolan nodded, feeling the weight of the last 8 years press down on him. They had won, but nothing could undo the damage Victor had inflicted. Some wounds would take far longer to heal. Later that evening, the group gathered at Julian and Elena's apartment for a quiet, somber celebration. News reports were already covering Victor's arrest, linking it to a broader investigation into his corrupt business dealings. The DA thinks they have a strong case even without our testimony, Henry reported after a phone call. But with Vanessa and the financial records, he won't be able to escape justice. Vanessa, now calmer but still subdued, sat beside Paige. I'll testify to whatever they need, she said. It's the least I can do. Across the room, Nolan watched her with unexpected sympathy. Vanessa had been both a victim and an accomplice in Victor's schemes. She had been manipulated, but she had also chosen to believe the worst of him. When they found themselves alone for a moment, Nolan asked, "What will you do now?" Vanessa looked startled by the question. "I don't know," she admitted. "The house will have to be sold to cover debts. Most of my investments are gone." She gave a small, sad smile. "I suppose I start over at 48. It's never too late," Nolan said, thinking of his own journey back from the brink. "Too late for some things," Vanessa murmured, glancing toward Elena. "I stole so many years from her from you." "We can't change the past," Nolan said. "No, we can't." Vanessa swallowed. "But I want you to know I'm sorry, not just because Victor turned out to be a monster, but because what I did was wrong. Using Elena against you. Poisoning her mind. I was hurt. I was bitter. But that's no excuse." Nolan nodded, acknowledging her words. He was not ready to offer forgiveness, not yet, but maybe in time. As the night wound down, Elena approached Nolan. "Dad, would you help me with something?" She led him to a small study off the main living area. On a table, carefully arranged, were dozens of unopened packages, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, graduation cards. "I found these in Mom's storage unit last week," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "Everything you sent me over the years. She kept them from me, but she didn't throw them away." Nolan stared at the collection, physical proof of attempts to stay connected. Cards written with love, gifts chosen with care, all of them unseen until now. "I thought," Elena hesitated, "maybe we could open them together. If you want to." Nolan swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'd like that very much." They sat side by side, slowly unwrapping 7.5 years of lost moments. Each card was read aloud, each gift unwrapped with care. Nolan explained the meaning behind every choice. The silver bracelet for her 16th birthday, engraved with their special saying. The first edition of her favorite childhood book, meant for her college graduation. The hand-carved chess set for her master's degree completion. By the time they reached the last package, both were crying openly. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered against his shoulder. "You have nothing to be sorry for," Nolan assured her. "You were a child caught in an adult war." "But I believed them. I should have questioned it. I should have reached out to you." "That wasn't your responsibility," Nolan said gently, holding her at arm's length. "All that matters now is that we found our way back to each other." As they rejoined the others, Nolan felt something he had not in years, a sense of closure. Victor was facing justice. Vanessa had acknowledged her mistakes. And most importantly, he had his daughter back. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges rebuilding his business, navigating the legal proceedings, setting new boundaries with Vanessa, but for the first time since that devastating day when everything fell apart, Nolan felt something new. Hope. 7 months later, Nolan stood in his newly rebuilt workshop, surveying the space with satisfaction. The insurance settlement, combined with a business loan from Henry Reed's bank, had allowed him to create a workspace even better than before. More natural light, upgraded equipment, and enough room for the 2 apprentices he had recently hired. The bell over the door jingled, announcing Marisol's arrival. She carried 2 cups of coffee and a newspaper tucked under her arm. "Morning, handsome," she greeted him with a kiss. "Thought you could use this. You've been here since dawn." Nolan accepted the coffee gratefully. "Big day? Julian and Elena are coming to see the finished crib." "They're going to love it," Marisol said, admiring the cherrywood crib he had spent months perfecting. It was a labor of love, its headboard intricately carved with a tree of life design. Nolan ran a hand over the smooth finish, still wrapping his head around the fact that in just a little under 2 months he would be a grandfather. "Grandpa Nolan," Marisol teased with a grin. "Has a nice ring to it." The past 7 months had brought profound change. Victor's trial had concluded with a 15-year sentence for arson, fraud, and criminal threats. Vanessa had testified against him, her cooperation earning her immunity from prosecution for financial improprieties. Nolan had forgiven her not instantly or easily, but gradually realizing that holding on to anger only poisoned his own happiness. Now they maintained a cautious but cordial relationship, united by their love for Elena and their shared excitement about the baby. Vanessa had sold the house she once shared with Victor, using the proceeds to clear debts and start a small interior design business. She was dating again, cautiously a kind-hearted accountant who treated her with respect. As for Nolan, Marisol had become an integral part of his life. Their relationship had deepened from friendship to love, though they were taking things slow, both carrying baggage from the past. But Nolan had already started designing a ring, his intentions clear even if unspoken. The bell jingled again as Marcus entered, carrying a large package. "Special delivery from Tessa Nguyen," he announced. Inside, Nolan found a framed newspaper article about Victor's sentencing, along with a note from Tessa. "Justice is served. Thought you might want this as a souvenir." Marcus grinned. "Should we hang it up?" Nolan shook his head. No need to dwell on the past. This chapter's closed. His friendship with Henry Reed had only grown stronger in recent months. The older man had become both a mentor and ally, providing business advice and commissioning custom furniture for Reed Innovations offices nationwide. Their bond had deepened beyond their children's marriage, built on shared values of craftsmanship, integrity, and family. At noon, Elena and Julian arrived. Elena's pregnancy was now impossible to miss, her rounded belly a visible sign of the new life they were preparing for. Nolan embraced his daughter carefully, still marveling at how natural and easy things felt between them now, something that had once seemed impossibly lost. "Let me see it," Elena said eagerly, moving toward the sheet-covered crib. With a small smile, Nolan pulled the cover away, revealing his creation. The cherry wood gleamed under multiple coats of hand-rubbed finish, the intricate carvings detailed but child-safe, every edge rounded and smooth. "It's perfect, Dad," Elena gasped, running her hand over the tree of life carving. "There's more," Nolan said, demonstrating the hidden features. A drawer beneath for extra blankets, a locking rocking mechanism, and the ability to convert into a toddler bed as the baby grew. Julian whistled in admiration. "You thought of everything." "Thank you, Nolan," he added, sincerity in his voice. "This means a lot to us." Nolan simply smiled. "It's what grandfathers do, build things meant to last." After thoroughly examining the crib, they all went next door for lunch. Nolan noticed Elena wince slightly as she Saturday back pain, he asked with concern. Elena nodded. "Doctor says it's normal. Just about 7 weeks more of this." "Your mother had the same issue when she was pregnant with you," Nolan recalled. "We found a special pillow that helped." "You'll have to tell me about it," Elena said. "Mom's been sharing pregnancy stories too. It's nice hearing both sides." Nolan smiled, appreciating how far they had all come. "I'm sure between all of us, this baby will have more support than it knows what to do with." "Speaking of support," Julian said, "Dad wanted me to invite you all to dinner this weekend. He's announcing a new charitable foundation and he'd like you to be on the board." Nolan blinked in surprise. "Me? Why?" Julian grinned. "Because you have integrity and good judgment, and because he considers you family now." Family. The word had taken on new meaning for Nolan. Expanded, redefined, stronger for having been tested and rebuilt. After lunch, Elena and Julian left for their pediatrician appointment, promising to return next weekend to pick up the crib. Back at the workshop, Nolan and Marisol began arranging tools for his afternoon class. Nolan had started a free woodworking course for at-risk teens as a way to give back to the community. "You know," Marisol observed as the first students arrived, "a year ago your life was in shambles. Workshop destroyed. Estranged from your daughter. Consumed by anger toward Victor and Vanessa." Nolan nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "And now look," she continued. "New workshop. Your relationship with Elena restored. A grandchild on the way. Victor behind bars. Peace with Vanessa." She smiled warmly. "And me, of course." "Definitely you," Nolan agreed, pulling her close. The best part of all, as the teenagers filed in, Nolan greeted each by name. He saw glimpses of his younger self in them kids, navigating grief, anger, and uncertainty now, finding focus and purpose in shaping raw material into something meaningful. That evening, Nolan and Marisol sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena, an ultrasound image. Baby's first picture for Grandpa. Nolan showed the image to Marisol, his heart swelling as he reflected on the journey that had led him here. 8 years ago, discovering Vanessa's betrayal had felt like the end of everything he valued. The years of separation from Elena had been an open wound, festering with anger and resentment. Then came the wedding invitation that never arrived, the humiliation at the reception, the now infamous lines "Sorry, your name isn't on the list." The shock, the hurt, the confrontation with Vanessa "Did you really think you were invited? Strangers aren't allowed." His dignified exit, "Then I'll live like a stranger." But that moment of deepest rejection had ultimately been a turning point. Julian's intervention, Elena's awakening to the truth, Henry's alliance, the gathering of evidence against Victor, and finally justice. Through it all, Nolan had learned that restoration, not destruction, was the heart of real victory. Restoring truth, rebuilding relationships, seeking justice not through malice but through patience, dignity, and unwavering resolve. Marisol squeezed his hand. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Nolan smiled. "Just thinking how sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best years of your life if you don't give up. And you never gave up on Elena." "Never could," Nolan said. "Some bonds can't be broken no matter how hard others try to sever them." As darkness settled around them, Nolan felt a deep sense of contentment. The past could not be changed, but the future stretched before him, full of possibility. Watching his grandchild grow, building his business, deepening his relationship with Marisol, strengthening his renewed connection with Elena. Victor had tried to destroy Nolan's family, but in the end, he had only forced it to evolve, stronger, more honest, more appreciative of the bonds that truly mattered. Nolan thought of the inscription he had carved inside his granddaughter's crib, words that summed up everything he had learned on this long journey. Family isn't made by blood alone, but by love, truth, and the courage to fight for both. That's the end of today's story. If you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. We read them all. And thanks for watching. You're always welcome here.